I ain't got no pants on. I think a running theme of my videos for a little while is going to be apple juice, because I want an apple juice kick. Hello world of YouTube. Welcome to the first of the two special videos I said I was going to make for reaching 700 subscribers, because, I cannot believe that I have done this. This is kind of a thank you to you guys, I guess. I don't know. It's a special. It's a special. And this is the one I think a lot of people want to see me do, so that's why I'm doing it first. I'm giving you guys what I know you want first, at least. Something music related, something music discussion related. And this is a big list, and I know I probably should have maybe waited until I reached maybe 1,000 subscribers or something, but I've talked about music for about 6 years, for 6 years now, so why not give you guys a bit more of a special thing for reaching this milestone, and that's my favorite albums of all time. Now, there is a list out there, it's been published for a long time, of my top 100 favorite albums of all time. So if you want to see that, if you want to see this list spoiled for you, it is linked in the description. However, in this video, I'm going to elaborate as to why the 11 that are in my top 11 are my favorites. And that's why I'm not going to be naming any honorable mentions. I'm just going to kind of get into the list. Artists that are on the list for those who want to wait till the end of the video so that you have something to get hyped for when you see. There's some Bowie, there's some Pixies, there's some Prodigy, there's of course the Radioheads, My Bloody Valentine's on there, LP is on there, Nas, Outkast. There's a lot of stuff on there. I cover a lot of genres. It's a pretty well-rounded list, if you ask me. There's some game soundtracks. There's a lot of stuff on there. And so, while this list may be geared towards a very central part of music, there's a lot of other music that you guys know I love, but is more fleshed out in the top 100. But I'm going to cut the descriptions more now and just get into it. Here's my list. Now on at number 11 is Orphaned's Mabool, The Story of the Three Sons of Seven. And this record, if you don't know, is an Israeli folk metal record, and was actually the record that got me into them. And how I found this band was back in high school. I would always just go on Wikipedia, because it was the only music finding source I had outside of YouTube and video games and all these other sources. It was the one that got me to the weirdest shit. And essentially, I Googled, or I looked on their death metal, and I looked in a list of death metal bands, and their title and their name caught my eye, as did their country of origin, Israel. And I looked into them, and I got Mabool, and my mind was blown, because they're death metal in the sense that they have growled vocals, and they have a bit more of a raw production on a lot of their older stuff. This record bridges a gap in their sound. It has a lot more progressive metal elements. The clean vocals are extremely prominent on it, but the growls are still there. They still have a lot of that raw production, but their influences from their culture seep more into this, and it's a perfect blend of the two. The instrumentation is so well layered and concise. The band reaches this huge peak on a performance level. The concept behind the record is pretty interesting, and the overall tone of this thing is just grand, epic, and awesome. I feel like this was a huge pivotal point in their discography, and it's hands down the best, really, record I've heard of this style that shows a lot of metal influence over a culture's instrumentation. They actually do a cover of an Israeli folk song, and it sounds so awesome. And it's fantastic. This thing is awesome, and I really love that I found this thing, because it opened up my eyes to the world that heavy metal could be. Because I was always a metalhead in high school. I think a lot of you guys knew that with a lot of my early discography reviews. But this band really opened my eyes to the potential that metal could reach, and I'm very thankful for it. It's an amazing record. And number 10 is Iced Earth's Burnt Offerings. Now, this band I actually got into through Jesse, who you guys have seen on the channel. We did a couple discography reviews together, and they're a power metal, speed metal, thrash metal outlet, and this is their third record. It's their first record with their best vocalist, because this band has gone through a gambit of vocalists. They're on their 5th vocalist now, and this record marks the introduction of their best vocalist. It has the best riffage, the best songwriting, and the best soundscape the band has ever touched. Because leading up to this record, their sound was a bit more pulled back. It was a bit more raw but it wasn't dense. It was just very stripped down. And this record introduced a lot more density to the riffage that complemented the band's sound very well. The drumming on this thing is incredibly ballistic at times, and that's why I kind of say thrash, because it's very thrashy. While the vocals are extremely Dickinson and Halford influence, this has a huge influence from thrash metal, which is a genre of thrash that you'll see on this list for more that I love, but that I extremely am in love with. I have been ever since I was young. And this, to me, introduced a style of thrash that I wasn't incredibly familiar with, because while I've liked power metal in the past, like before I really got into Iced Earth, I liked Maiden a lot, and I liked some Priest work. This opened my eyes to more thrashier power metal bands. And while I like some other bands like this, like Firewind and 3 Inches of Blood, this band showed me, and I guess epitomized, this style of power metal to its fullest. I mean, there's a 16-minute jam on here about Dante's Inferno, and it's just fucking amazing. If you like power metal, or even if you like thrash metal, I feel like you can dig this record to a degree, and I feel like you should definitely give it a chance, because there's a lot that this record has to offer, both on a heavy front and on a soft front, because the soft songs on here are really well constructed, and they're not ballads in the typical sense. They really fit the same tone that the album presents in a really strong way, and it's an incredibly balanced record, and I think that if you like thrash metal, this might be a good introduction into power metal for you. In at number 9 is the only repeat artist in this top 11, and it's obvious that it's a repeat if you know, again, what my favorite album of all time is, but it's Nine Inch Nails is The Downward Spiral. The first time I heard this record, I was a sophomore in high school. I found it at a yard sale, and my mom said that I would absolutely love this record, and she was right. Because I had listened to Nine Inch Nails in the past. I had already been versed in some of the songs on here, some of the stuff from With Teeth, Pretty Hate Machine, and this record, to me, showed an artist willing to show himself to his core. Especially when I reached some really, really low mental points in the year, I kept gravitating towards this record because it showed me that it's not a bad thing to be vulnerable. It's not a bad thing to showcase an absolute bleak mindset. This record handles every aspect in the realms of bleakness that I think you can get. There's some really just tortured mindsets put to in this thing, and it showcases, whether it's in Trent's vocal delivery, the soundscape, the instrumentation. There's a lot on this record, and I've reviewed this record before, so my opinions are kind of well established about it to this point, but there's just a lot of sadness put to this record that even upon first listen, I immediately latched onto. Whether it's the title track's distant sounding chaos, to the warmth of A Warm Place, to the very welcoming nature of that song, to the absolute bleak, fed up nature to Hurt. There's a lot on this there's a lot of moods on this record, but they're all under the same umbrella, and they're all presented equally magnificently. I feel like this is the best example, at least on this list, of music as therapy, and it's exuberantly crafted. Some of my favorite Nine Inch Nails melodies in general are on this thing. A lot of the piano work that's on here is great, and it's brilliant. This thing is fantastic, and I've already reviewed this thing, so I feel like there's not much else I can say other than, if you haven't listened to it based on my first review, you definitely should, because I love this thing a lot. And at number 8 is another record I've reviewed, Machine Head's The Blackening. And I talked about this record in my review as a modern-day master of puppets, and I still agree to that statement. It's a band pushing their sound as far as it can go, while maintaining a lot of their character they had built up to this point, excluding one part of their career. This is Machine Head going balls out, writing the biggest songs that they can grasp at, I feel like had they not made this record, they wouldn't be continuing to push their own envelope today, because they see their fans appreciate when they push their own boundaries, when they push their own envelope. And I feel like had they not made this record as ambitious as they had been from a songwriting, from a song structure perspective, we wouldn't be getting records like Unto the Locust and Bloodstone and Diamond, which are both really great records. Still not as good as this record, but cast shadows very similarly to this in the fact that they're trying their hardest to push their own boundaries. And I feel like that is a very important thing for a band in this lane to do, and I feel like with this record they epitomize that, because they, I guess, had nothing to lose. They had already an established career, but they felt like they needed to step up their game to a large degree, and it worked so well on this thing. The riffage, the density, the ethereal moments on this thing are all just achieved magnificently. And again, I've reviewed this record, so there's not really much else I can say other than, if you like thrash metal or groove metal and you haven't checked this out, you're doing yourself a disservice, because this is a really great modern representation of the two genres, and it shows a band trying their hardest to not necessarily emulate their idols like Metallica, because they are huge Metallica fans, but to try and be as ambitious as those bands. And the first time I listened to this record, I was captivated by the ambition, the sound. The sound of this record is so uniquely them, and it's them finding a character that works so well for them. And I remember the first time I heard Halo, from the rumbling bass to just that awesome riff to all of the solos that are in that song. It captivated me from minute 1 to minute 8, and I couldn't help but find the Blackening, keep the Blackening. I own this record on multiple platforms because I love this goddamn record so much. It's so good. Now, in at number 7 is actually the only album of this genre in this video that I'm going to discuss, but not the only one of this genre, or not only one on the list of this genre, and that's Wu-Tang Clan's Enter the 36 Chambers. Now, I got this album in college. A friend of mine, Gabe, gave me this. He gave me a bunch of hip-hop records. He gave me 36 Chambers. He gave me some Wu-Tang solo projects. He gave me Biggie's Ready to Die, a couple Tribe records, like a whole bunch of hip-hop that I love now, you know, but I didn't have I knew of, you know, growing up and getting into music, but I hadn't had a huge affinity for. And out of all the records he gave me, I latched to this one the most because it was just the most impressive to me. Because I had heard of Wu-Tang, and I knew that a lot of people liked them, but holy shit. This record has so much personality, diverse personality, and such a great set of beats as well. This has both immensely fantastic beats with some awesome sample work, with some of the best ferocious, raw verses that you could get out of 9 dudes. You know, I wrote a review for this once on Rate Your Music, and I described it as a hip-hop version of King of the Hill. It's just dudes going after each other, just going one after one after one, just having immense fun. And there's others that are highlighted more. There's some that are highlighted more than others. Like Method Man is obviously shown a bit more than Master Killa, who only has one verse on the record, sadly, because I actually kind of like Master Killa in his solo work. But it's just a great set of tracks with a bunch of MCs who just have a lot of character and a lot of their own personality, which I think is important. Because there was a lot of this sort of stuff in the 90s. You know, you had Tribe Called Quest, you had Souls of Mischief, you had Black Moon, and I feel like all those groups are great. You know, I like all of those groups, but nothing came close to Wu-Tang to me in terms of like dudes who just got it and made it work for them immensely. And I fucking love so much about this record. I think that it's just a great collection of tracks, and it led to a lot of really good solo careers, because there's other Wu-Tang projects in my top 100, because I fucking love Wu-Tang, dude. When I got into Wu-Tang, I really got into Wu-Tang. Like, to put it into perspective, like a couple of months later, my friend Gabe sent me a thing to a poster to a festival that was coming here. I didn't get to go to it. It was Rock the Bells. Rock the Bells was coming, and I told him, you know, I geeked out because I saw that Master Killa was doing No Set Date and a bunch of other stuff that he didn't give me. And he was like, holy shit, you really got into Wu-Tang, didn't you? I was like, yes, thank you. I really love Wu-Tang. It's so awesome. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of people love Wu-Tang. I'm another guy who likes Wu-Tang. And now you know that if you haven't listened to Wu-Tang, you probably should. And at number 6 is Rush's Moving Pictures. Rush is another band who has multiple entries in my top 100, and this is the highest one because the songs on here are just awesome. Bar none. Awesome. Best Rush songs ever. And I feel like part of the reason why I love this record so much is because I heard it live in its entirety, but we'll never know that. There is probably a dimension out there where I hadn't seen Rush play Moving Pictures live, but we will never know how that me likes Moving Pictures any more or less because we can't do that sort of thing. Nevertheless, I feel like that does have a bit of influence over my love of this record because I did see it performed live in its entirety by the band. However, that being said, the songs are awesome. It's the best bridge of Rush's more theatric, proggy side with their synthy, straightforward side that they were going for in the 80s. It's got some of their catchiest tracks in Tom Sawyer, and even in YYZ, just that da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, just fucking works. The synths on the Camera Eye, which is my favorite song on the record, just enwrap me in every time, just that build-up, and then the da-na-na-na-na, like, I love that record, this record so much. Like, it's got such a great pacing to it, and it worked perfectly in a live setting. Seeing this thing live definitely, I guess, did influence my opinion, because the first time I heard this record, I thought it was great. I loved Tom Sawyer, I loved Witch Hunt, I loved Limelight, and all these songs, but seeing it performed live really put the whole thing into perspective. Being able to watch it basically unfold before me was just impeccably done. They put on a great show, you know, and every time I listen to the record now, I am taken back to that moment, but I also have just an immense appreciation for all of the work that was put into this thing, all of the synths and all that sort of stuff, and all the songs that they played aside from that I also really love now. Like, after hearing them live, hearing a song from Presto live, I went back and listened to the record, and I actually like it more than I did then. So I don't know. I guess seeing Rush in general really enhanced my love of the band, but seeing this album live enhanced my love of the album more. So there's that. But yeah, this album's really good. It's the best, I guess, dad rock record because it's the one record from this band, or I guess it's the one record from this era genre that made it this high on the list. But it's a great record in general. And yeah, that's pretty much it. I could talk about Moving Pictures for days because I'm a huge Rush fan. I could talk about Rush for days because I fucking love Rush. But yeah, Moving Pictures. It's my favorite. It's a lot of people's favorite Rush record, but it's deservedly so. And at number 5 is Queens of the Stone Age, Songs for the Deaf. Not a song for the Songs for the Deaf. And Shake actually got me into this band. So I want to thank Shake for that because I fucking love this band, and I love this record. Anytime I'm going on a drive anywhere, if I know I can knock Songs for the Deaf out throughout the drive, I will throw it on, and I will listen to this record from start to finish. Because this record is just perfect for that. Its concept is about driving through the desert, concept in quotes, but it's just so well put together. It's got a lot of really good riffage, some amazing drum work, some awesome screamed and sung vocals. Like, just this thing is just thick and muddy and awesome and catchy and so friggin' good. If you haven't listened to this record, especially in a car setting, you're missing out because that's the best environment for this thing. It's just the epitome of this style, and it's just absolutely brilliant. And the first time I heard this record, it was another one of those instances where I was just immediately hooked. This immediately became one of my favorites the first time I heard it because there's this moment in the beginning when you're listening to it and you're listening to this opening skit and the first song is building up and then it explodes and you're just like, yes, this is what I want, all of this all the time. And it works. There's a lot to this record that just works on so many levels. There's a lot of grit, but there's a lot of catchiness. And both of those two styles blend so perfectly here. Josh Homme and the boys just knocked it out of the park here. And my review's not here, but I'm partially quoting a review I wrote for this on Rate Your Music because I've been going through and writing reviews for records on there, and I wrote a review for this, and essentially that's what I said. This record is just a wonderful collection of songs, and there's a variety of tones and moods presented on this thing that are all done fantastically. It's a great record. It's It's really good, and it's the perfect piece to put on a road trip at some point. So if you're ever, no matter who you're with, if you're with your grandma, if you're with your Aunt Karen, if you have an Aunt Karen, if you're with your significant other, whoever you may be with, try and convince them to sit down and listen to this with you, because it is a trip and a half, and it is damn well fine as a trip. So you should definitely check it out. And at number 4 is Metallica's Master of Puppets. Obviously, if I'm going to put the modern equivalent of it on the list, I'm going to put it itself on the list. It's been in the background of almost every discography review. It's a record that's followed me around since I was a kid. This is probably the earliest record I had been introduced to that's on this list, because I grew up with this record. My mom's a huge metalhead, and she's a huge Metallica fan, and this is one of the few records in its entirety that she would play for me as a kid, that I would listen to as a kid. And I guess it's a big reason why I still love listening to it now, because it's followed me for so long, and it's the best of its genre. The density on this record is unmatched by the band. Their guitars on this thing just speak to me on a cosmic level. Like, I fucking love that. I listened to the title track of this the other day when I was walking to work, and I was just completely enwrapped in it still. Like, I love the instrumentation on this thing. I love the mixing on this thing. It's just it's unmatched. Like, the songwriting is unmatched. It's really great. It's really good. And I've reviewed this record, so it's not really a whole lot I can say about it that I haven't said already. But the riffage and the mixing on this record in general is something I wish they never strayed away from, because it's so raw, but everything is so cleanly heard. And I want to emulate the mixing of this record if I'm ever mixing metal music, because it sounds so perfect. Like, I don't know what they did to achieve it, but I want to know, because the vocals sit in the mix so perfectly that I feel like the guitars and drums should clash with it. Everything should clash together on this record from a mixing standpoint, but none of it does, and that's the magic of this record. That, and again, the songs are really fucking good. Whether it's a slow song like Welcome Home, or The Thing That Should Not Be, or something like Disposable Heroes or Damage Incorporated, everything on this record is perfect. The pacing is amazing. It's thrash done perfectly by the world's biggest thrash band. That's it, plain and simple. Master Puppets, small summary, this guy. Go check it out if you haven't. If you haven't, based on my original review, here's another recommendation. Go check it out. And at number 3 is Beck's Odelay, the only album of this genre on the list. And not the only Beck album in my top 100. Again, Beck's another one of those artists who has multiple albums in my top 100, because I really love Beck. Whether it's an unpopular album or a popular album by Beck fans, I probably love it to a degree. But this record, Odelay, just encapsulates everything Golden Age Beck did and does it perfectly. It has a lot of that wacky sensibility. It has a lot of that hip-hop influence. It has a lot of that wacky, oddball, stoner folk dude, but just spun through that hip-hop influence spectrum. There's a lot of nuances on here that are great, whether it's the sax on The New Pollution, the keyboards on Where It's At, or Where It's At in general, that really weird dissonant screech that's in the chorus, I love, but annoys some people. When I used to work at a department store, when they started playing 90s music, they played this song. They played this in The New Pollution a lot. And whenever this song came on, I always had my coworkers go, what is with this song? And I would just be there just like, where it's at! And just dancing with it, because I love the song. But I realized that dissonant screech could really get on people's nerves, because it's very weird. And I remember, because Beck was one of those artists I kind of grew up with growing up. My mom played a bit of him. But when I first listened to Odelay, I thought it was the weirdest thing in the world, but I never wanted to stop listening to it. It's almost like Mischief Makers. I want to akin my love of Odelay to my love of Mischief Makers, because it was an experience that was unmatched in the musical landscape that I listened to, but it was one that I kept wanting to gravitate towards because it just caught me. I couldn't stop listening to the weirdness that was Beck, whether it was Odelay or Midnight Vultures or Wero. Like, all of those records are great, but Odelay is definitely the one that hooked me the most and consistently kept me coming back for more oddballness. And it's cool. It's got some really cool musical ideas that I'm glad that Beck decided to go with. I'm probably going to go listen to it. Even though there's 2 other records that I love more, I'm probably going to go and listen to Odelay after I make this video because I love this record so much. And at number 2 is a debut. Rage Against the Machine's debut. Their debut. Another record I reviewed. And like Master of Puppets, the mixing on this record is just impeccable. It is perfect. The bass, guitar, and drums and vocals all sit parallel with each other in the mix. Nothing precedes anything else. And that is so amazing. The drums are punchy. The guitars are really aggressive. And the bass is so funky. And it all just works so well. And Zach's just screaming along with it all. And it's great. About a month and a half ago, I threw this record on and I was listening to it again for the first time in a while, and the songs were still giving me goosebumps. Whenever Zach just gets into it, he gets aggressive and he gets raw, it leaves me with a feeling that no other metal record or heavy record can do, and it's not even the heaviest music I listen to, which I think is impressive in itself, because I'm a guy who likes, who liked and still likes a lot of heavy music, but this still gets me going more than any of that. And I think it's partially because I love the passion behind this band. Almost every Rage Against the Machine record is in my top 20. Actually, all of the records are in my top 25. Rage Against the Machine is one of my favorite bands still. And it's because not only this record, but all of their records are just a reflection of a band who had a lot of passion to what they had. And I respect that immensely. And I love their instrumentation and their consistently cohesive nature to each of their records. This one especially. It's just absolutely, bar none, 10 tracks of excellence. It's just another record that I just consistently can find myself going back to and still getting excited about, which I guess is why I love it so much. And at number 1, there's... anyone want to throw a drum roll in there? It's not a surprise to anybody because I talked about this record to death. I still love this record, but I'm going to tell a bit why due to a recent excursion I had with it. So, my number 1 favorite record is 9 Inch Nails' Pretty Hate Machine. Only repeat record, only repeat artist in my top 10, but I re-listened to this record very recently because I hadn't thrown it on in a long time, and I wanted to kind of just be enveloped in it again. So I threw it on, and during Something I Can Never Have, there's a moment, because I was listening to it with headphones. I sat there, I had my headphones on, it was in an empty apartment, and during Something I Can Never Have, there's a moment after the bird swell, which if you didn't know, there's birds in that song. The birds come in, and there's some synths that are really, really low in the mix that tease the same melody that surfaces on the synths again before the final chorus. And I about had a geek attack because I had never heard that before. As much as I've heard this record, as much as I love this record, I've never heard that before. And it reignited my love of the record again. And I continued to pay attention to the record after I listened to it because it showed me that there was still stuff I could find in it. And I wrote a review for this after that experience, and I'm just going to read you my review of that, because why not? So, the review is called A Series of Textures, and then in parentheses it says, also a little masturbation. So I decided to sit down and listen to this for the first time in a while, front to back, and I told that story in the review, and I've reviewed this record, but here's kind of a new review of it. There are so many subtle nuances buried beneath the absolutely brilliant textures and synths that are sprinkled throughout this thing. It has atmosphere, complete control of its mood and presentation, some really great beats, particularly on Kinda I Want To, Down in It, and The Only Time, and an overall just wonderful combination of noises and melodies that come together in 10 perfect songs. It treads the line of angst, dread, guitar-driven aggression, and sadness perfectly without losing its completely dance-driven and pop-fueled nature, with the exception of Something I Can Never Have, which splits the record brilliantly. These are pop done right. This is a pizza I can eat over and over without getting sick of it, and sometimes I can still find some flavors in it I hadn't tasted before. Kind of like the time I realized that DiGiorno used sweet flavor in its stuffed crust pizzas. Not only much better because I wouldn't say DiGiorno is my favorite pizza. Definitely the best frozen banana of all time. The pizza allegory is because I end my reviews on Rate Your Music with comparisons to pizza. But that in itself is why I love the record. It's just 10 perfect pop songs 10 amazing songs, because even Something I Can Never Have has a really good hook, a really good melody, and whether it's Sin, Sanctified, Ring Finger, every moment on this record is just all of what I had just said put into 10 amazing songs. And it's a great debut from an amazing band that just continues to entrap me every single time I throw it on. The first time I listened to it, I really liked it. I really loved it. I liked a lot of the noises, a lot of the poppier sensibilities, but all these years later, I still love all of that, if not more, because I'm still finding reasons to love it. And I think that is what makes it so great to me, is that there's still things I'm learning from this record by listening to it. And yeah, it's my favorite record of all time. That's my top 11 favorite records of all time. Again, if you want to see my top 100, the video, the list to that is linked in the description, along with all 11 favorite songs from each of those records if you want a little sample from each of them. So there's that for you. Thank you again for 700 subscribers. Hopefully you enjoyed me geeking out a little bit about music, and hopefully you continue to enjoy the music-related discussions I bring to the table. I'm going to go because my camera's going to die soon. I have been ViralRak. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.